If you are what you say you are, a superstar, then have no fear. The camera's here and the microphones, and they wanna know. Yeah. A fresh, cool young Lou, trying to cash his microphone check 212. Wanna believe my own hype, but it's too untrue. The world brought me to my knees. What have you brung you? Did you improve on the design? Did you do something new? Where your name on the
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Talk Spicy. I'm Coach Gene Clemens, Riptide Media Networks. Appreciate you joining me. Rate the show, comment, agree, disagree, but whatever you do, keep it spicy. 5-star ratings are appreciated. If you're joining me on the YouTube channel, make sure you like, make sure you subscribe. We back. I know I haven't seen y'all in a few days. We were off on Friday. We were off on Monday and Tuesday. I can tell you right now that it will be this way for the next couple of weeks, because for those of you that don't know, I teach amongst many other things that I do, and we just finished up the school year at the end of last week, and your boys got to get in some type of recharge of the batteries, because football season is already upon us, right? Like we don't get the luxury of hanging out and waiting for too long. Football season is right around the corner. And if you know anything about high school and now even youth and college, people get back to work. So once the dead week is over in the state of Georgia where I reside, we back to work. So definitely have to get this time off in while I can before we get back consistent and daily. But once I do, you can trust it is going to be nonstop, balls to the wall every single day. Got a great show for you today. I'm going to be joined in the second and third segment by Whit LeJour, the head football coach at Bridgeton Academy. For our weekly Zebra Stripes podcast. We recorded that yesterday, so you're gonna hear it or see it today. Just keep in mind that we recorded that yesterday because I had to, work off the old guy's time. And I always appreciate when he gives us the opportunity to grace us, with his presence. A really good conversation was had. But I want to start here. A lot of leaks are coming out. There are a lot of leaks coming out about the EA Sports College Football 25, right? And I'll read this off of Dove Kleiman's account because I know he's one of the ones who's been covering it. And shout out to all of the people who had the opportunity to preview the show. I mean the game, for everybody that had the opportunity to play it. This is no shade on all of you, but I haven't seen anybody that looks like me talking about the game. And a good friend of mine brought it up, and I won't mention his name because I don't know if he wants to be mentioned. And I'm always willing to stand in front of the bullets. But he made a really good point. There are so many faces that look like me in sports media, yet I didn't see any of those faces talking about, oh, I got a chance to try it out. Oh, I can't wait to tell you guys about it. I haven't heard any of those leaks coming from people like me. Now, again, it's just one me. Maybe I didn't see it. Maybe there are people out there who tested the game out who look like me. I just haven't seen them. So if they are, this isn't an indictment. This is an observation. If they're out there, please let me see them. Tell me who they are. I want to connect with them, right? Because college football, in my opinion, means something different to everybody. And that game specifically, college football from EA Sports, means something different in my communities and communities that I grew up in than it might in other communities. It's okay. It doesn't devalue or make it more valuable. It's just different. So I want to hear the difference. I don't like I plan on talking to people who tested out the game. But I want to get different views, right? From different and the only way to do that is to get a diverse amount of people. But right now, I'm not seeing the diversity. I'm just being honest. I'm not seeing the diversity. So I want to find the diversity. So if the diversity is out there, help me out. Let me see it. I want to be able to touch it. I want to be able to talk to them. That's all. Beyond that, right, from Dove Kleiman, it says massive letdowns for EA College Football 25. No cross-platform on Online Dynasty. No ESPN presentation scoreboard. No high school in Road to Glory. No mascot mashup. No Gus Johnson / Joel Klatt. Right? And it says brutal. Now, here's my problem. Because I was not one of the people who was like jumping for joy that college football was coming back. I was one of the ones that said, well, if college football is coming back, first I want to see what? I want to see the players and how the players are going to get paid. Then I saw how the players were going to get paid, and I said, disgusting. I said, I guarantee you Shedeur Sanders isn't signing for this money. I guarantee you the 3 people that they had on the cover didn't just go, oh my gosh, it's so good to be on the cover, I'm going to do it for free. Nope. I'm sure they were paid. But the rest of the people who just signed off, now look, let me say this. If you signed off on yours because you're a backup and you don't play and you're just happy to be on the game, that's different. I'm only talking about the people who make the game go. And that's the stars. That's the people, the college football stars that people are coming out. They're coming out to see their school, but they're coming out to see that player play for that school. Like, did you give yours up for $300, $500, whatever it was, and a free game? That's what you did? So that's one of my issues, right? Beyond that, if they're not going to pay the players in this first year, if they're not going to pay the players, what made all of you people think that they were going to go out and put together a fully comprehensive game in the first year? They're starting all over again, ladies and gentlemen. They're not using the platform and the connectivity of the old college. They started from scratch. If you remember the original college football, it didn't have none of that stuff on it. It didn't have any of the things. And not for nothing, you guys were so thirsty for the game that they rushed this thing out. We really should be getting EA College Football 27. Right? We really should have another 2 years because, once they have it up and running, they just essentially sell you the same game year after year, just with updated rosters, right? Updated rosters, updated ratings, maybe one new wrinkle. But this hasn't had the opportunity to put all the new wrinkles in. We're not even sure that EA Sports has had an opportunity to sit down with ESPN to get them in bed with the game. This isn't Madden, where it's been consistently going on now for well over 20 years. College football has laid dormant for several years, and now they've got to play catch up. You can't play catch up all in 1 year. So why are people so surprised that this game is going to be missing out on things? Why are people so surprised that this game is going to lack some of the stuff that you would hope a game doesn't lack? There was no way they were going to please people in this first year. There was no way they were going to get it right in this first year. Impossible. Right? If we're being honest, it's impossible for them to get it right in this first year. Why? Because there was just too much to do. Do you guys all know what goes into making a game and then making it look the way they want the game to look in today's modernized video game world? We should be happy we just have a game, right? No cross-platform on online Dynasty. You think they were thinking about online Dynasty when they were trying to get the game up and running? You think they were thinking about the presentation scoreboards when the game, the high schools in the road to glory was something that they added several years after they came out with the game. Mascot mashup. Who cares about that? Really? Like, who cares? Here's what I'm going to want to know. Do they have alternate uniforms? Can I wear the throwbacks? We've already heard they've got all of the playbooks that you can possibly want, right? We know that that's a thing. So that's what I was looking for. I want to know how accurate the playbooks are. I want to know how in-depth they went with the playbooks, because the college game is significantly different than the pro game. And we can't forget that in the gameplay. There's a reason why speed option works consistently or works a lot in college, but doesn't really work in the NFL. Because they make it that way, because in their minds, speed option shouldn't work in the NFL. Right? They still haven't really walked that back. You still have a difficult time running read option in Madden. You better not have a hard time running read option in college football. Because if you do, then that's going to say a lot about the gameplay. Okay, this gameplay is not realistic. Because read option works for everyone. If you run it the correct way. That's the things I'm going to want to know, how realistic the players look, how smooth the gameplay is. I'm going to want to know what that player versus player is going to be like. How are they going to have it equitable? Or is it going to be one of those things where everybody's playing with super teams because they were able to buy themselves upgrades to their... You remember back when we played college football and the dude would come over with his own like thing to plug in and it would have his roster on it, but that meant it had his team on it and his team was like super beefed up. Like it looked like the regular team except all of the attributes was turned up on it. How are they going to keep that from being a thing? When we go into dynasty mode, and I'm playing with multiple players, what's our connectivity? Am I going to be able to talk noise to my guy in California and in Texas and in Florida and up in Maine and in Chicago? I need to know those things. I don't really care about the mascots. I wasn't expecting this game to be perfect because when I saw the way that they were going to play players, they're not willing to take a financial loss in this first year. See, they're looking to cash in on this first year. They're probably projecting that this year will be the most people that buy the game because of the excitement for it to be back, right? The nostalgia. People are going to walk right through. They're going to walk right through all of this hubbub about no cross-platform and ESPN and high school and blah, blah, blah. and they're going to go out and pay their $100 for the game. Some people are going to have to go out and buy the platform, right? They're going to have to go out and buy an Xbox One or a PlayStation 5 in order to even play the game. Right? So, like, that tells me they're not looking to take a loss here. They're trying to win here. They're trying to win immediately. They don't want an L. I don't blame them. I'm just telling you, they don't want an L out the gate. And because they don't want an L out the gate, because they think this is the chance to cash in and get boku money, they're lowballing the players. They're not paying the money that they should to gain the other things. And then maybe next year, right? After all of y'all complain, they're going to go, we heard all of your complaints. We heard your complaints. We see you. We recognize you. We take onus in your feelings. Here is the improvements. And they're going to spoon feed it to you, right? Why? Because they can. Because they can. They're going to spoon feed it to you because they can. And what are you going to do? You're going to eat it up because they're going to make an improvement. Oh, man, thank God they did this better. They've been doing that to us on Madden every year since it came out. Every year there's some glitch. There's something geeky. There's something stupid going on in the game. People complain about it. They come out and go, you won't have to worry about that in 2025. We fixed it. And they go, thank you. And then there's some other glitchy thing going on. There's some other goofy thing going on. That's how they get you. That's how they put the needle in the vein. They get you hooked. We were hooked on college. And as Bomani Jones said, we got off that narcotic. We got off the narcotic. And now we're loading up for it again. They're just trying to find the right vein. Why are y'all surprised? Why is everybody surprised that they're not going to do this thing the right way out the gate? When you rushed it, you made the demand so crazy that they had to get it out so quick. You championed it. You didn't give a damn about the players making any money. I heard, I saw, I read journalists or people claiming to be journalists. You know what better? I saw people in the media going, man, I don't care about none of that, getting them kids paid. I just want this game. Oh my God, just get us the game. Do whatever you got to do, just get us the game. At no turn has the media stood up and said, the media outside of the smaller people who don't have the voice that those on the outside have, at no turn has anyone else stopped and said, yo, no, wait. This is why there was no game. Because they were making money hand over fist off of free labor. They can't do that in the NFL. In the NFL, those players get a check at the beginning of the year, every year. I listen to the Raw Room. Shout out to the Raw Room, JCU, my guy. Right? I listen to the Raw Room. And I listen to them dudes talk about getting their Madden checks. 15 bands, 18 bands, 12 bands, 14 bands, depending upon the year. 1,000. That's a drop in a bucket to them. You know what they do? They go blow that. They talk about it. They just go blow the Madden check. They use the Madden check to buy something. Something reckless usually, right? I'm not judging them. I'm just saying they're blowing the check. What would $17,000 do for a kid from Georgia who was living out his dream to go play for the Dogs, but his people are back home, still in the hood or still in the country with little to nothing. So he's sending whatever little money he get from Georgia, right? From his scholarship, now from NIL money, he's sending that back. He's sending that back to the crib. Imagine what 17K would do for him to be able to take that 17K and go, hey, yo, ma, you ain't got to worry about paying a rent for 6 months. Yo, 6 months on the rent, ma, I got you. Hell, 18K? Yo, ma, I got the rent. And I can still put 6,000 in my pocket, right? I can still put 6,000 in my pocket. And now I don't have to feel bad about whatever it is I do with that 6,000 because I took the 12 and I paid off the rent back at the crib for a year. So now they can use that money to come up, to make things better for life. Like, that's what I'm talking about. That's what I've always been talking about. The opportunity for these kids to maximize their star while they're a star. And many of the media walked right through it. They said, nah, we just want the game. We don't care about how much they're getting paid. And so now you're mad because they don't got the mash up right? It's because y'all don't keep the main thing that we never get the stuff the way we should get them. You don't appreciate, right, the people who really are responsible for why the game is great. And because you don't appreciate the people who are really responsible for why the game is great, you allowed it in your mind, they don't matter to the game being great until they're gone. Right? How sad is it for people who root for college teams to now know that they never really truly get to have a player become a superstar and stay with the team? Not unless you're like a handful of teams, maybe 10, right? 10, 12. That's it. Everybody else, they have to watch their stars go to free agency and end up on one of those 12 teams. Why? Because you didn't keep the main thing from the beginning. You always sided with the school when they weren't paying the players. You always sided with the entities saying, oh, well, a scholarship that's their payment. A scholarship is a payment. Meanwhile, you let the band people go and do gigs and make money on the side with their talent, but you wouldn't do the same thing for the basketball players or the football players. And guess what happened? Now we're here. Now we're here. Where you're complaining about a video game that hasn't come out yet and the things that they haven't done in the video game without first acknowledging that they didn't do right by the people that make the video game worth going to. When I go to play with Alabama, I'm not just going to play with Alabama because they're Alabama. I'm going to play with Alabama because they got Jalen Milroe, and I want to be Jalen Milroe. When I go and play with Colorado, I'm not just going to play with Colorado because they're Colorado. I'm going to play with Colorado because they've got Travis Hunter, and I want to be Travis Hunter, or I want to be Shedeur Sanders. When I go to play with Florida State, it's because I want to see how good I can make DJU. That's the difference. Even within the established, even within the established programs, that means so much to a community, that means so much to Americana as a whole, we still have the situation of, hey, how is this player on this team that's supposed to be good? You don't think that people are going to go out and play with South Carolina just so that they can try to play with the young man that plays wide receiver for South Carolina? You don't think that they're going to go out and you don't think they're going to go out and try to get a hold of Nick Harbor, that 6'5", 240-pound stud that ran a 20.2 200 meter? You don't think that they're going to go, oh yeah, I want to see what it's like to play with him on a football field, right? Like, I want to see what it's like to play with him on a football. If he's that fast on the track, imagine how fast he is on the football field. By the way, we need to talk about this Nick Harbor thing, because I've heard some things. I've had some arguments with people over, not arguments, but discussions with people over the weekend, and it just got me uneasy. But we'll do that soon. Stay tuned, because next we'll be joined by Whit LeJour, head basketball coach of Bridgeton Academy. We'll bring you our Zebra Stripes podcast. This is Talk Spicy on the Riptide Media Network.
Adopt US Kids presents What to Expect When You're Expecting. A teenager. Learning the lingo.
Today I'm going to help parents translate teen slang. Now, when a teen says something is on fleek, it's exactly like saying, that's rad. It simply means that something is awesome or cool. Another one is totes. It's exactly like saying, totally, just shorter. As in, I totes love going to the mall with Becca. Another word you might hear is jelly. Jelly is a shorter, better way to say jealous. As in, Chloe, I am like so jelly of your unicorn phone case.
You don't have to speak teen to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will think you're, rad just the same. To learn more, visit adoptuskids.org.
Welcome to Zebra.
A public service announcement brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
This is the story of a very special woman. In a matter of seconds, she turned herself into a great mathematician or an entrepreneur. Her knowledge was limitless and still is. She could also make monsters disappear, especially those that lurked in the shadows under the bed. Once, this woman put back together a teenage girl's broken heart, which had been shattered in 1,000 pieces, just by giving her a bear hug. She masqueraded as a regular person at work, but as a superhero at home. Everyone knows her as Gabriella. I still call her Mom.
Your hero needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need to help, complete with tips and resources at aarp.org/caregiving. A public service announcement brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Hey, Dad, your prescription will be ready in just a minute. Hey, Dad, your laundry will be ready in just a minute. Dad, your lunch will be ready in just a minute.
Hey, honey, why don't you take a minute?
When you help care for a loved one, you give them as much time as you can, making sure they're safe and comfortable. But it's just as important that you take some time for yourself. At AARP, we can help with information and useful tips on how you can maintain a healthy life balance, care for your own physical and mental well-being, and manage the challenges of caring for a loved one. Because the better care you take of yourself, the better care you can provide for your loved one.
Thanks, Dad.
Thank you.
You're there for them. We're here for you. Find free care guides to support you and your loved one at aarp.org/caregiving. That's aarp.org/caregiving. A public service announcement brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Zebra Stripes Podcast. On Talk Spicy, I am joined as always by Coach Whit of Bridgeton Academy in his palatial estate, hanging out where all the window panes go to die. Coach Whit, how are you?
I got to be honest with you, I'm freezing my ass off. It's cold and damp here on this Memorial Day. I think part of the reason I'm feeling the cold in my bones is because the last week featured weather not only in the 70s but 80s, mid 80s, maybe even high 80s. Good weekend to start, and then this thing blew through today, and it just reminds you, like, my God. So no golf today for me. Been, at it pretty regularly, pretty good, sun, getting all sorts of stuff. And, whoa, golly.
Yeah, definitely antithesis of that here. It's extremely hot. We've had a few thunderstorms over the end of the week, Friday and Saturday. Which I thought was going to cool us down, but instead just essentially made us a giant sauna. And so it's been really hot, really muggy type of weather over the weekend, and definitely into today. I was at a cycle bar class at 9 a.m. and it was already so hot that the changing room, or the room where everybody hangs at before they go into the workout area, it just felt heavy, felt warmer than you would normally feel in an air conditioned place. So definitely extremes on both sides. I will say though, we are now officially both on holiday break or summer break or whatever you want to call it, wherever you are. We have said goodbye to our respective schools. Our last day was last Friday. Our seniors graduated on Tuesday of last week, which was really interesting because our seniors graduated on Tuesday. We had to come back to school right after graduation. And then on Wednesday, we had a regular day of school where only a few kids showed up to school because, why are they coming? And then obviously the last couple of days of teacher work days and putting a bow on things. But it is good to get another one in the book. So congratulations officially. If I didn't tell you congratulations before, one more down.
Well, congratulations to you, since you've been I got over a little bit before you, and I'd be happy to. The door was open to that sauna. I think I'd walk into it right now, happily.
I understand. Speaking of which, we walked happily. You know what? Let me table that, because just probably a few hours before we started recording, we both got the news that legendary basketball personality Bill Walton had passed away from cancer. It was something that hit me out of nowhere. I don't think I really knew he was dealing with cancer. I think I may have known that there was something up because he hadn't been around, but I also kind of just took that as, hey, he's getting older. A lot of these companies have kind of turned over some of their broadcasting talent. Maybe that could be a reason why. But when the news struck me, or when I received the news that he had passed away, it struck me, this is probably how he wanted to go out. Like the fact that nobody knew that he was dealing with something. So what was your thoughts when you first heard about his passing?
Well, I mean, again, I think you're always taken back, I think, by celebrity passing. Sometimes more, like, I think it's, people are dying in this world. We could get really serious about it and say, hey, but I think celebrity deaths are, strike certain chords. he's only 6 years older than me. So, the older you get, you see more and more peers and whatnot. That's one of my reactions. Like you can't imagine the people that you've essentially grown up with and somehow, some way, a part of your life, whether you actually know them or not. I mean, Bill, he was a pretty, obviously a character, which you're alluding to, and a character on air. I liked him. I know I was always struck by people that just, he was so, in part, wordy because he had grown up through a lisp and speech impairment. Well, that he well documented. I just liked the places he'd go, and I probably liked all the Grateful Dead references he would make too. But just sad, I guess. But what a life, right? Lived it on his terms. Everything that you're saying there, just feel for his family. But just on certain levels. But on the other hand, like this is someone hey, look at. He's not a direct friend. He's not a family member. There's people in this world, all the things that we sometimes get to, and so just to at the end of the day, on a personal level, another reminder, man. Right? I think someone said it to me recently in the Shawshank. Get busy living or get busy dying. I said it again to my wife this morning. We were talking about it. So, or not this, I guess, I don't know what the heck we were talking about, something anyway, but there it is.
Yeah. I think that the reason that I think this resonates with me and maybe, similarly to you is because at one point in time, Bill Walton was a preeminent voice of basketball. Like it was like Dickie V and Bill Walton. Like those were the two big characters, the big personalities of sports broadcasting, especially specific to basketball broadcasting. So I find myself in thinking about him and thinking about what I wanted to say about him. I found myself doing two things. The first was thinking about him as a basketball player, because I like to always get back to the, keep the main thing, except with him, I don't know if that was the main thing, right? Like he was an elite basketball player in college. He was a guy who people said was elite, but was riddled by injuries in the NBA. And I think a lot of times got elevated as a basketball player based off of what he was in college, and people let that spill over into what he was as a pro. But then as a broadcaster, as a color commentator, I actually thought he was underrated, because a lot of what you heard was formulaic, and there was nothing formulaic about Bill Walton. So like there was this part of me that always, like when he was live and they would talk about, bigs and people would bring up Bill Walton, I would just roll my eyes, right? Because I'd be like, okay, all right, I get it. He was good at UCLA when people were regulating, and he was like one of the only big dudes and blah, blah, blah. I had all the excuses in the world. But then when talking about him as a broadcaster, and people would go, oh my gosh, Bill Walton's annoying. I'm like, what are y'all talking about? Like, he's original. And isn't that what you want? You just want everybody to sound exactly the same on these broadcasts? Or do you want some originality? Because if you want originality, then the one thing you can say is that Bill Walton was original. Like, he wasn't out here spewing the exact same stuff. Was he a UCLA homer? Absolutely. Did he also give UCLA a lot of criticism when they weren't doing well? Absolutely. But I think he thought about the game differently. He brought his own unique eye, his own unique view to it, and I appreciated that. And so, in his death, when he had become such a larger than life personality, we were talking about this before we came on. I think that he just knew, like, when he was diagnosed, whenever it was that he was diagnosed with cancer, I think he just knew, listen, I don't want to share this with the world. I don't want the world to be in on this. I want the world to remember the Bill Walton that they either loved or hated, whichever one it was. I want them to remember that guy and not remember whomever I am down the stretch of my life based off of what this illness does to me. And I appreciate that, because I watched my grandmother like wither. I watched my grandmother go away. I watched her not look anything like the woman that I had revered, because this disease had taken away her the ability for her to communicate and for her to be independent, which is what she was her entire life. So those things really hit me when I was thinking about his passing. And so it's just, I look at it and I go, we don't get the chance to decide the end date. But if anybody squeezed the juice out the lemon, it was Bill Walton.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, the originality piece that you talk about, because it strikes me as in a different way, maybe similar to Barkley. So, there's a lot, obviously Barkley gets a lot of credit for being a guy who gets as much license as he gets because and he's so good. I think there was some of that to Walton, like you say, and I would say, look, as a player, I think the injuries are the only thing that stopped him from being whatever it is that he might have become. But again, like we've talked about before, he didn't, we're not talking about LeBron James here. His health did not allow him to become the player he would have been, but he was more than just a good college player, that's for sure. And anyone in the pro game that talked about him knew that he was, he didn't hold up to it.
Yeah, I mean, he was a legend. You can't take anything away from his collegiate career. Yeah. He was a legend in college. Like, he was unstoppable almost.
And he was a great player with the Trailblazer. I mean, he's young. I mean, let's say as a Trailblazer, he was a great player. I mean,
Yeah, but was he? This is a debate for another day. But like, I feel like in college, he was every bit as impactful on the court as a Wilt Chamberlain. I mean, not Wilt Chamberlain, but as a Lou Alcindor. Right, like what he was able to do,
different sort of way,
different game, absolutely, but impact, saying like unstoppable, can't do anything with him, right? So like, that we know, that we can stamp. The NBA part, we just don't know.
Well, my point is that Jack Ramsey coached Portland team that won a championship with him. He was that same dominant player.
You think he was as dominant as?
Yes.
As Kareem Abdul-Jabbar?
Yeah, for that period of time. My point.
Okay, yeah, I got you. So when you're talking about just at Portland when he was
right,
I got you. Okay, I'm with it.
Yeah,
I'm with it. I mean, I can't dispute they won a championship, right? So it's like
And they were a great team. They were a great team.
They had some good pieces, but you don't win a championship without good pieces.
Right.
Speaking of underrated stuff, and there's really no great transition when you're talking about someone passing away. But the NBA finals have been the NBA Eastern and Western Conference finals, excuse me. They've been interesting. And one of the reasons they've been interesting is not because of like the counts on the games necessarily, because right now both are sitting in very dominant leads in the series. What is very interesting to me is how we were so dismissive of the Dallas Mavericks coming into the playoffs. We said, they'll get by. They got a good chance of getting by Oklahoma City, because Oklahoma City is X, and they don't really pose They're young. They haven't been there before. They don't have any veteran, kind of leadership. But we all agreed it didn't matter. We both had agreed it didn't matter who they got, who got next. Was if it was Denver or if it was Minnesota, that was where the road was ending for them. And
I didn't even think. I mean, I didn't even. You had them beating OKC. I really didn't even have them doing that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough. And so now they're sitting 3-0. And they've won. It's been 3 games that Minnesota all 3 games they had a chance to win. It's not as if Dallas has just run away with this thing. They clearly have some flaws, right? They clearly have some flaws that we see Minnesota take advantage of in spurts, but just haven't been able to close the door on them. It's really easy to just say, well, they have Luka and Kyrie, but like it still doesn't change the fact that we thought they would be out of here, that it wouldn't even be close. So in your opinion, why were we so wrong?
Well, I think I was so wrong because I'm still holding Kyrie hostage to his time in Boston when it just was so ugly, right and wrong, that you just say, my God. So full disclosure, like I listened to an interview with him after a game. I think it was maybe the first Minnesota game, or maybe it was after they won the OKC series. And I listened to an interview and I said, wow. And not that I don't listen to that much Kyrie or any of the, but I just said, this guy, he sounds like a mature guy. I mean, he sounds like a different human being. And so then I saw they had Jackie McMullen, who was a legendary Boston basketball writer. And I think she was on a TNT broadcast too. And she said the exact same thing. She said, Kyrie, and she'd be in a position to know better. She said he's grown up and he kind of gets it and this and that, because no one's ever questioned his ability. It was almost his commitment to the game and maybe to winning. So for me, that was one. Now one, and so then I say, oh boy, and the other was Luka. Luka, I just not completely sold, but those moves that they've made, to complete their team, make them a good team. And bottom line is, don't discount Jason Kidd. His role obviously in Kyrie's buy-in and the whole deal. So for me, there was several factors there. Luka, who obviously is a supremely talented player, but I wondered if he could function with somebody else. Looks like he can. Kyrie, I've already described, and now they've got other pieces too. It's not just those two, and Jason Kidd is getting it done. So there you go. Yeah, Minnesota, by the way, let me just close. Minnesota's talking like, you know what? Just like you said, we can get these guys. We're going to start one game at a time. They're toast. Like Minnesota, like I had Minnesota would make short work of these guys. They'd guard, but Minnesota's still talking like they're going to beat them. I'm saying, no, I don't think you beat them in these 3 games. Maybe you get one, but you're toast. So Dallas, you're way better. And by the way, Boston, look out, because those two are superstars.
So it's multi-layered for me, right? First off, I've got to give Dallas credit. I'm not as into the whole maturity thing in Kyrie. Right. We've seen him play second fiddle before.
Yep.
We've seen what he does when he buys into just being the number 2 dude, and we know that he is probably the most unique number 2 we've ever seen, because he has absolute, like, unequivocal number 1 ability. So I don't think that's as big of a thing. I know a lot of people in New York, I know a lot of people in Boston feel that way because of the things that have happened. I just think that he became a very convenient scapegoat for a lot of the stuff that was going on in those things that wasn't all his fault. And maybe if some other people had a little bit more humility, who hadn't done nearly as much as he had in the league, they would be better off for it. What I can't get beyond, and this is why styles make fights, Minnesota put together a team to beat Denver, and Denver only. The way they play defensively fits the ability to guard Denver. It doesn't fit the ability to guard anybody else. Not to the level that you have to in playoffs. So I'm going to go back to what I said originally. If the Lakers don't get beat by Denver, the Lakers have a chance to be right here playing against Dallas right now, because that's a bad matchup for Minnesota. The fact that Dallas is here is a bad matchup for Minnesota. And you know why? It's really simple. Because big men don't operate like big men anymore. That's really what it comes down to for me. Karl Anthony Towns is probably the most frustrating big man to watch in the history of basketball in Coach Gene Clemens' life. I have never seen anyone as talented be so unwilling to just do what's necessary to win in the moment, who only ever wants to win the way that they want to win. They don't want to win any other way. Karl Anthony Towns sat out there and missed 9 3-pointers, 9 shots that they were clearly saying, we'll live with Karl Anthony Towns shooting threes. We don't want Karl Anthony Towns in the paint. I watched as a series early in the game. Dallas came down, threw it inside, movement dunk by one of their quote unquote bigs, who are nowhere near as big as Towns or Gobert. The ball comes back down on the run. Towns catches it at the foul line extended, not at the foul line, on the side of the lane, right at the line of the lane, throws up a floater. Baseline just throws up a floater right at the line. That means you're less than a step for a 7-footer away from the rim. And at that point I went, why wouldn't you just go and dunk that? Or try to dunk it, get fouled. They've never used in any of these games, they've never used the one advantage that the other team can't do anything about, which is if we just start pumping it down here to these bigs inside, you're going to foul them. You're going to get in foul trouble. And now let's see what your bench can do. They never get them to that point because Karl Anthony Towns refuses to be an offensive force in the paint. And the defensive player of the year isn't an offensive player. He's just not. All of his points are going to come off of rebound putbacks, wide open dunks. That's about it. He's not making any moves. That's why it was so surprising when he hit the turnaround jump shot, in game 7 of the last series. And they were like, oh, we're winning because if you see him hit a turnaround jump shot, then God must be on our side. That's why everybody is so surprised by it, because he is not an offensive player. So that onus goes on Karl Anthony Towns. He has to be that guy. And when everybody knows that you really think you're a 3 guard and you don't think that you're really a big man, you don't operate down there, we'll live with you missing or taking 9 3-pointers. But if you look at the scores of every single game, and you look at how many times Karl Anthony Towns settled for a 3-pointer in those games, if he just said, I'm gonna do what Jokic does. I'm gonna catch this thing at the 3-point line, and I'm just gonna bully my way to the rim. He makes half of those. He makes 3/4 of those. That's enough to sway the game. That's how close these games have been. You're going to get people in foul trouble. You're going to make easier shots. You're going to help your team be a winner. he wants to be Kevin Durant so damn bad that he's willing to risk losing opportunities at championships to do it. And the craziest part about it is very similar to when Milwaukee, who I thought was a very flawed championship team, was able to ride just a good, like some good seeding and some luck in people being injured to a championship. I can see the same thing happening for them when they go against Boston, for Dallas when they go against Boston, because Boston has some of these same issues. They don't have anybody inside. So
no, they do. He's on the bench right now, hurt. Porzingis changes Boston. Healthy Porzingis.
Milwaukee.
Right.
That's what I'm talking about. Milwaukee had the run because once they got to Phoenix didn't have Chris Paul. Right? So like that's all I'm saying is that injuries, because of the way injuries have happened, if Porzingis isn't able to go in the finals,
right,
now we're looking at a team that matches up perfectly with Boston.
Yes, agreed.
And
totally
so
agree.
that's my problem. That's my issue. I've now seen enough of it. Drew Holiday is not going to be the difference defensively. He's not going to be the difference.
No, but he can be part of the difference.
He can be part of it, but you remember what I said? I said it was his time. He had to be the difference. Halliburton went out there and did whatever he wanted. TJ McConnell came in murdering. That hasn't been a stop for anybody. And so like if you don't have the Porzingis in place, this could end up being one of those magical runs for Dallas where they make the run and you never see them do it again.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you and your point about the fact that the NBA is about matchups. I mean, absolutely. You hear coaches talk about that periodically, NBA coaches. So, I mean, I think that's on point too. And it shows you why I don't think that I'm not sure who, because I don't watch all the shows, but, anyone that picked Dallas would have been I think Barkley had him to do, I don't know, he may have had him to beat Minnesota at the beginning of the series too. But anyway, Dallas was not your mainstream pick. But I think again, things unfold and it rarely goes well, sometimes it goes the way you expect and sometimes it doesn't. If Boston wins against Dallas, either with or without Porzingis, the narrative after will be, oh, well, of course they won. They're the better team. We knew it all along, and I would disagree with that because no one is a bigger naysayer on them than me anyway. So it's not a foregone conclusion at all, regardless, whether they're with Porzingis, without, against Dallas or anybody else. They've still got but they've got one more thing they've got to do. But if they do it, everyone will say, wow, that was obvious. Everyone knew Boston was going to win. No, that's crazy talk.
Yeah, and they would be awful for saying it. And that brings us to Boston, who is right now up 3-0 on the Pacers. They play tonight. I don't see the Pacers winning, especially if Boston's able to spot, Indianapolis or Indiana 18 points and still run them down. Like I don't foresee the Pacers winning. And then now we started to hear these arguments of, well, Boston hasn't been challenged. That Boston is going to go into the championship game or into the NBA finals without really being challenged. And is that going to hurt them? And I think that's just such a crock of BS. Like you can't have it both ways. You can't tell them to be dominant versus the teams that they're supposed to be dominant against, and then go, oh, well, now somehow that's a problem because you were dominant. That doesn't make any sense. Number one, they're going to be the fresher team, most likely, because they haven't played as many games. Number two, they've been challenged. They've been challenged by Denver before in the championships, in the finals. They've been challenged by gritty Heat teams. They've been challenged by other teams that have given them issues over the years. This isn't the first year. They didn't just emerge the Boston Celtics have essentially done. They've gone the route that most NBA champions have to go. They've had their early round hiccups. They've run into roadblocks that they had to get beyond, and then they've assumed a dominant level and rode that to a championship. This can be that year that they assume the dominant level. They've been the best team in the NBA for most of the year, and now if they ride that into a championship, we shouldn't be able to just marginalize it and go, well, of course they should. We should go, this is the culmination of doing it the right way, quote unquote, right?
Yep. No, I think you're 100% right. So, I mean, their trajectory is exactly the one that, that typically teams follow, and teams that have a chance to be, repeat teams or there for a while follow this path too. So it's not to say Boston's going to be a dynastic team, but they've got a lot of good pieces and they're young enough to be a threat. And so then it'll just come back to, matchups and, what the postseason ends up, what happens in the Eastern Conference, et cetera, as far as the other contenders go. And, just what Denver faced this year. That's never easy to repeat. It's just not easy to do for a lot of reasons, because you're, a lot of reasons, which Denver has talked quite a bit about. So, I'm all in. I think it's, not to say I think Boston can win without Porzingis too, but I wouldn't bet on it. I do think he changes them. I think he really does that for the better. But I'd like you said, their experience, things they've been through are gonna help them. I don't know. We'll see. Indy. Yeah, I'll give Indy a fighter's chance tonight because it's Indiana, man. Indiana, is it's not Springfield where basketball is invented, but it might as well be. They probably ought to move the birthplace of basketball to Indiana. Be a more fitting place, maybe. All due respects to people of Springfield and Dr. Naismith. So those crowds are real. The passion is real. This is real. They've got heart. They've shown that all along. They've shown they can. They've got ahead a couple games where they could have won. So your common sense. My head says Boston does get it done tonight, but I am not going to be surprised when Indy beats them and potentially puts a scare into them back in Boston, where Boston hasn't been dominant at home. Now, if Indy wins, I don't see this thing going 6, so that means it might. But I think it's in Boston's interest, back to your point, because I think Dallas will. I think it's in either team's interest to close out this series and get the rest that you were talking about earlier. Get the series, get a series over and get rest. So I don't know.
All right, let's have a little bit of fun. I need you to take off your homer hat. Can you do that? Can you just look at this just strictly as a basketball coach?
Yeah, it's hard to do, but let me try.
Okay, we're gonna try it. Take off the homer hat. No homer hats on. Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, or Luka and Kyrie?
I'll take Luka and Kyrie.
I like it. Why?
Well, first of all, more it's a better complement to back to the old thing about Boston, and I do think Tatum is being diversified his game some, and Brown is committed to this and that, so they're playing together better than they ever have, no doubt about it. But the fact of the matter is the tendency of both being scoring wings that occasionally, their assists to each other are not high. Not to get bogged down in the iso ball thing, but that's a part of the way the Celtics play. And I just think Luka and Kyrie are they're different, and which is good thing, and they're each dominant in their own way. And I think each has, I don't, Luca, I want to say each has more experience, but, I mean, and Kyrie is certainly one, to your point earlier. Luca is every bit, for whatever Brown and Tatum are, Luca's pretty freaking good. So, I think it's the guard. I think it's Kyrie that in that, when you go that little 2-on-2 thing, it's Kyrie
that's where
you over the top.
That's where I was going to go at. I think Luca and Tatum cancel each other out.
Right. Yeah.
I think the problem is that Jaylen Brown, I don't care how much money he gets paid. He ain't Kyrie.
Right.
It's never going to be Kyrie. Never was Kyrie. Right. Never going to look like Kyrie. And it's not that Jaylen Brown is bad. He's just different. Right? He's just different. Like the way in which Kyrie is able to manipulate the entire other 9 guys on the court while he has the ball in his hand is something that none of the other 3 can do to that level. And
the guy that can do it next best is Luka.
Exactly. Is Luka. So I was watching the game yesterday. Was that yesterday? Day before yesterday? I was watching the game. No, yesterday. I was watching the game and I said, yo, I just would not let Kyrie Irving touch the basketball. And then someone was like, well, yeah, but then it's going to Luka. And I said, no, it's not, because I'm not letting him touch the basketball either. They're like, well, then you're going to have somebody wide open. And I said, well, they're going to have to score 100 points. Like, just that, they're going to have to score 100. That person's going to have to score 70. I am not letting these 2 dudes sit with the ball in their hand, and just manipulate everything. They're going to have to work so hard to get the ball, just to even get it.
You know what's fascinating about that, though, is that, I mean, that was kind of Minnesota's DNA, and again, back, they defensively check you so well and put so much pressure. And yet, again, I've said this on the pod a lot, NBA level now, you have to be very careful extending your defense at all, right? Because all these guys are so good. You start extending, you start gambling, you start, one, it's hard. And 2, you open up more space for the offensive players. So good luck. I mean, that is same old stuff, man. That works when you're better than someone. But when that person, I don't know, So anyway.
It almost one of those, like you said, it doesn't matter about the defense. If he's got it going, he's got it going. And if both of those dudes are getting 30 plus, it's going to be hard for you to win them games.
Right. And now, again, I back to the same old thing I've said before, too. Hey, the game's not played 2-on-2 either. So that's where these other players do become, significant factors. Obviously, for the Celtics, I'm saying Porzingis is the one, the game changer. And I think for Dallas, the fact that they made some of those acquisitions, PJ Washington, right? I mean, they're just, they're playing now that Kyrie and Luka have had more time together. They're playing way better themselves, given, and then the pieces around them are better than what they've had too. So, look at that, we're better, because it's still, 5-on-5 game.
I think Anthony Edwards is playing with house money. What he continues to do in these playoffs in this year is establish himself as the next coming American star, right? In an NBA where we are starved for who's going to be the next American star. He has firmly positioned himself as one. He jumped over a lot of people to do it quickly too. He has firmly positioned himself as one, because you still have the established stars, but their clock is ticking and it's getting faster, right? LeBron's still here, but the clock is ticking. Kevin Durant's still here, the clock is ticking, right? But and Steph Curry, he's still here, but the clock is ticking. You're going to then you're seeing what Anthony Edwards is doing in this playoffs and in this series, and you saw the dunk last night where he looked like he was on a goddamn pogo stick and just launched. Like people keep trying to, somebody was trying to give him Vince Carter level explosiveness, and I said, well, you've just never seen Vince Carter. Like it's not even comparable. It's Vince Carter, it's everywhere else. And so then he said, well, maybe somewhere in between Vince and Michael Jordan. I said, well, clearly you've never seen Michael Jordan. It was like Michael Jordan was an elite level athlete before he was an elite level basketball player. And that's what people like are seeing with Anthony Edwards. Here's the difference. Anthony Edwards still has to go beyond like Dwayne Wade. Like he looks a lot like what Dwayne Wade looked like to me when Dwayne Wade was young and spry and launching in that type of stuff. Probably a little bit more bounce. Yeah. If I'm being honest, more bounce, but same type of game, like same type of fearlessness attacking the basket as Dwayne Wade had. And so like I'm like, you got to get some steps before you get to the dudes. But in today's NBA, where you've got a Jason Tatum who's been Jason Tatum now for a few years, but he ain't no Anthony Edwards when it comes to the perception on the outside, right?
No, he can help him. He's not, but he can really take a step forward if they win a championship, and he has a good series. Like because that will change the narrative. That will get really interesting.
That's where I was going. So he is here. Anthony Edwards is here. Anthony Edwards is here. They're both on the Olympic team. Halliburton is here. He's on the Olympic team. Will this like Olympic? And we're projecting out, but I like the fact that they're all active right now. Well, Drew Holiday is there, but will this be the passing of the torch? Like, will we look back at this season and then the culmination of it being the Olympic Games if Team USA is able to beat the world again and win another gold medal? Will we look back at 2024, the 2023-2024 season as the passing of the torch from the old guard to the new guard? Very similar to what we saw when Kobe came back to the Redeem team, and it was like those younger stars, but then this like luminary and Kobe kind of his last hurrah. But now it was Kobe out and all the rest of these dudes like going. Will we look back at 2024 and say that?
Well, we might, and by that, are we saying primarily Steph and LeBron and
Durant?
Yeah, is that what we're saying? Really?
Well, those are, and unless I'm missing a preeminent star,
right? No. So in which case, I think the only way we won't be saying like LeBron's got a real decision to make, and I don't know. I don't follow the Lakers. You know better than me, but what they're capable of. The same thing. Golden State, the Lakers, and Phoenix, right? Yeah. They've all got some major league issues. So, obviously I think each of those stars has a tough road ahead if their organizations aren't able to quickly and reshape the rosters. And I'm not certain that either organization can. So in which case, then these guys their goose is cooked. Time is up. Pass the torch. So I think you're right.
Is it a situation where Porzingis makes the difference in a Dallas Celtics final, or is it going to come into play that Dallas knows Porzingis better than any other team's going to know Porzingis in the NBA Finals?
Well, yeah, I think that's both
Who
things.
wins out? Who wins out?
Right. Both things can be true, but because it's the NBA, I'll say, as always, the player wins out. I mean, it is, it is a players' league. So, therefore, you can know anything you want to know, but if someone is healthy and if they get it on, then good luck stopping whatever it is they put on the table.
If Boston goes to the NBA Finals without Porzingis and they lose, will Boston fans go, yeah, but we didn't have Porzingis?
Yeah, that's exactly what Boston fans will do.
Will they have a right to do that?
I mean, I will probably be someone doing it myself, and the right I will claim is that I have said watching Porzingis with Boston this year, they're not the same player. I'm not trying to be stupid about it, but I saw Larry Bird's rookie camp in Marshfield with Red Auerbach. I saw it. I was there, and I said, "Holy shit!" And you could see game changer all over him. So the same thing. As soon as I saw Porzingis, and I was, hey, it's good. I'm glad Boston made some moves, all that. But I knew the skeptics. I knew I was skeptical. As soon as I watched 3 games or whatever the hell I watched, I said, "Oh my goodness, God, this changes the chemistry." And so, since I have been pro, obviously in a big way on this podcast with KP from the beginning, then if they don't have him and lose, I'm going to say, well, yeah, because the guy I've been saying spices, the cherry on top. That's all. Because, and again, same thing. I mean, there's other moves that are helping him too. Like, no Marcus Smart. I like that. I like Boston's backcourt. It reminds me of the freaking late 60s and really early. I don't, but 60s and 70s, Boston's always had backcourt, not superstars. Not White and Holiday aren't superstars, but they're really, really freaking good. They happen to be playing well and they complement each other. So Porzingis is the guy. He's not there. Yeah, I say, you know what? We'll never know what would have happened if he was healthy. But that doesn't. But that's the NBA, man. That's the NBA. You got to be healthy.
But what about the people who will say that you were just in a championship the year before without him?
Yeah. Then I'd go back to something I think you said to me on one of these pods. Or brought it up in a different context. I'd say, yeah, you did, but you had Robert Williams, who at that time I thought too, like, holy smokes, this guy. You're talking about Karl Anthony Towns. Hey, play your role, do your thing. Well, Robert Williams as a defender was a game changer. Like, look, might as well be the second coming of Bill Russell, for God's sake. Both around the basket and the way he'd get out to the baseline. So like, if we don't have Porzingis, okay, like bring back Robert Williams and I like us again against Dallas. Like, we get Robert Williams in here next week, then I like him. You need something, is my point. That Robert Williams was a hole. It's been filled with a completely different player, but you need something there. And without him, and obviously that something ain't Luke Cornett, who's good, but I mean, for what he is, but.
Yeah, I think a lot of times, right? One of the things we don't need to be careful of, but I think people who listen need to understand, because I know that you go out of your way to say someone is really, really good when they're not really, really good, but that's because you don't want to say that they're not good or that they're not as good. Like, I think we tend to overemphasize someone being good or better because we're comparing them to us or to the world, but we can just compare them to the NBA. Like, White and Holiday are really good on this team, but they're not really good. They're not really good.
Well,
if they were really good, they wouldn't be on this team.
No, well, White was just young enough when he got traded by the Spurs, he was just, and I think there are players and I would say this, and I think Drew Holiday, most of the NBA was like stunned the Bucks parted ways with him.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. So,
but they got a really, really good player in return for him.
Yeah. Three-way. They did.
Yeah, they parted ways with him because that's the only way you get a Dame Lillard back.
Right. No, got it. I mean, obviously, if there was a way that they didn't have to do that. So my point is Jalen Brunson, for instance. No one, if we were having the conversation a year ago, we're saying, well, he's good, but he ain't really, really good. I mean, you might have been saying
everybody but me. Everybody but me.
Exactly.
Yeah,
but, that's my point. So I don't, Derek, you're right, though. You're right that, look, Derek White is a really good player with this team. And I think he could be a really good complementary player on a lot of teams, too, which makes you, really good.
Okay. Really good as in that role.
Yes.
Got you. Okay.
Because that's knowing your role, right? We use that statement in sports all the time. There's a talent there,
Absolutely.
So that's what maybe I think his intangible factor and IQ factor is really, really high. And I think it, with some players, it just jumps off the charts at you. I think he's one of them.
I think one of the things that I'm going to be looking at if Boston wins is what's the energy like game one.
Right.
I think the game one energy, the game one urgency, is going to be something really good to watch. Win, loss, what's the urgency? I feel like you almost got to get game one. I feel like that. And so if I look at them and they seem like they're okay with letting game one go somewhere down the stretch, if they're fighting tooth and nail to try to get the win at the end of game one, if they're losing, even if they lose, I'll feel better about it. But if it's a situation where they're losing and down the stretch, it doesn't seem as if it is, I'm drowning and I need to find a way out of this water with every inch of my being, I'm going to feel away, because I just don't think they have the dudes who can just go and flip on the switch whenever, because they've been known to let games go that they shouldn't let go.
Yeah, I think game one will be high urgency level, both teams, Dallas and Boston. That's what I would expect to be a high level game, because I think I'll go, I think the winner of game one, 75%, chance of winning the series probably. I think if there was a different matchup, you could say there could be it would be a different feeling out, I think. So I think there's going to be a lot riding on game one. But that being said, game one only leads to game two, which is true. So for whatever team, right?
Is it as simple as Dallas has the perfect storm of two ball dominant point guards in a lineup being coached by one of the best point guards in the history of the game? Can we just boil it down to being that simple? They're figuring out how to do this thing because Jason Kidd would figure out how to do this thing if he were in their place.
Well, and Jason Kidd, not only if he was in their place, but now as a coach. So you got to give him props on both, because.
I'm saying his abilities as a coach to me comes from the fact that he was the preeminent, heady, think the game through point guard. That's what I'm saying is he understands how to make it work with the 2 point guards who are ball dominant, because he was a point guard who thought the game out, and had that ability. I don't know if Nick Nurse isn't getting this done. No offense to Nick Nurse.
Right. No, I hear you. And then
I think that there's just some there's certain people who are just uniquely qualified to handle this type of roster with those two talents on it. And I think that just happens to be, where you get a guy like Jason Kidd.
Yeah, and I think Missoula is in his own way, right? Because you hear multiple, who was it? Drew Holiday's singing his praises about the trust factor and some of that. Obviously, people know, his relationship with Tatum seemingly got him the job. So what I'm saying is Missoula's got this martial arts-like, Zen-like, team vibe player thing. Which, if it works, he is going to be lauded for and be like, and if it doesn't, will come crashing down. Whereas Jason Kidd, and the stakes are higher for Missoula, obviously, but because he wasn't the sort of player Jason Kidd was. But Jason Player's got this unique ability, as you're talking about with the guard. So Missoula, it's all a aura thing around the entire team and whatnot. I don't know.
It brings back up I was listening to I was watching Dan Levistar at South Beach Sessions with Stan Van Gundy. And Stan Van Gundy, they were talking about being players, coaches, or whatever, or something. And he was like, you can, or a relationship with players. Yeah. And he said that you could have a relationship with the player, but if the player doesn't perform, then what good is that relationship? Right? Like, people are always talking of, and I think this came on the heels of them discussing what is his name? Head coach down in Miami right now.
Oh, Spoelstra.
They were discussing Spoelstra and whether or not he saw greatness on Spoelstra early. Mm-hmm. I had to take a breath for a second, because greatness is rarely just within the coach, but the players that the coach is able to be around, and shout out to him for what he had. But he said one of the things that stood out to him is when he came in to an interview and he said, hey, these players don't have to like me. And it was like really early into LeBron and Wade and Bosh. He said, these players don't have to like me. That's not what I'm here for. I'm not here for them to like me. And to say that without any cachet, because this is your first head coaching gig, right? And everybody's just waiting on Pat Riley to come down from the stands and take this thing over. Mm-hmm. And Stan Van Gundy said, well, there are some coaches who have have good personal relationships with players, but if it doesn't elevate them beyond or to the level that they need to be in order to be successful, then that don't matter, right? That doesn't matter. So you're opening up like a freaking can for a whole pod on coaching and on relationship coaching is in vogue now. You started it. Sorry. It's your fault. You did the Missoula Zen thing.
Okay.
And because he was Jason Tatum's homeboy, I'm like, that's silly. Like in my mind, I'm going, that's a dumb reason to hire a guy.
But it seems like that seems like how he went from the second row to the first row. If you like, that's all second accounting to, and then we know in the modern NBA, well, it seems like Darvin Ham and Vogel was out because Durant, seemingly that's the narrative around some of the firings. Bickerstaff and Mitchell. It's another one, right? We're not even talking about the coaching firings today. But my point is, Van Gundy, you're just right. I mean, it's just right about, well, the relationships are great in this world, but not if the production. This thing is about production, and so if the relationships fuel production, then great, and if a lack of relationship fuels a lack of production, well then okay, form a relationship. So that thing goes, all sorts of different ways. I thought what Jeff Van Gundy a long time ago, maybe he got it from older brother Stan anyway, but talked about like how do these guys that like Spoelstra that weren't elite players and this and that. The players, players got to respect you. What are they going to respect you for? Knowledge of the game, knowledge of the game. Can you show them something? Can you teach them something? Can you help them win? Can you, all of that? That's number one. And then he went down, to obviously, he had a list of 4 qualities. Okay. If I look at my old clinic notes, I'm sure I'm fine it, but knowledge and ability to take that knowledge and give them something they don't have with it. So I don't know.
I think you're right on. You're right on with it, and it sounds like something that both Van Gundy's would say, because they think about they think about the game the same way. They just emote different types of like emotions from it. It's an interesting conversation, one we could definitely have another time. But by the time we're talking again, hopefully we are into the NBA Finals. If we just had to say, it's going to be Boston, Dallas. Let's get a prediction. Boston, Dallas, NBA Finals. Who wins how many games?
Well, with Porzingis, Boston 6. Without Porzingis, Boston 7.
With Porzingis, Boston 6. Without Porzingis, Boston 7. Okay. I will say, with Porzingis, Boston. Without Porzingis, Dallas in 5. That's where I'm going. I think they've got younger, more spry role guys that just have bought into their and the 2 role guys on the role guys for Boston are in the backcourt, and this may be the series that hurts them.
Yep.
This may be the one. We'll see. It's going to be fun. It's going to be fun regardless. And I know that you'll be watching every moment of it.
Yeah, and I might have put my homer hat on there with that prediction, but
I like it. Yeah. I might have jumped out the window with Dallas in 5, but I feel like it's an overcorrection.
I like it though. Yeah, no,
it's an overcorrection from the fact that I dumped on them so heavy. I feel bad because I really just thought other teams would play them differently because they had the ability to do it and they didn't.
Yep.
But hey, shout out to them. Ladies and gentlemen, that's been Zebra Stripes Podcast. I'm Coach Gene Clemens, joined as always by Coach Whit Lejour. You can follow him on X at Whit Lejour. You can follow me at Gene Clemens. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, peace.
To some people, the sound of a baby babbling doesn't mean much. But that's not necessarily true. By 6 months, they're combining vowels and consonants. By 9 months, they're trying out different kinds of sounds. And by 12 months, their babbling is beginning to take on some meaning. Especially if there's no babbling at all. Little to no babbling by 12 months or later is just one of the possible signs of autism in children. Early screening and intervention can make a lifetime of difference and unlock a world of possibilities. Take the first step at autismspeaks.org. A public service announcement brought to you by Autism Speaks and the Ad Council.
The following is made possible by Dad.
Why was the basketball court all wet? Because the players kept dribbling all over it.
The dad joke. Corny, grown-worthy, but also one of the simplest ways to share a moment with your kids.
Why do you have to be careful when it's raining cats and dogs? Because you might step in a poodle.
And kids that spend more time with their dads grow up to be smarter, more successful.
Can I tell you a cat joke? Just kidding.
And with any luck, funnier adults.
Why didn't the skeleton go to the dance? Because he didn't have any body to go with.
Dad jokes rule. So take a moment to make a moment and give your kid a laugh. It's as easy as going to fatherhood.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
That's really funny.
Okay, men. This is your time. Maybe you didn't choose this, but you're here now. You're gonna go out there and be an all-star caregiver. It's up to you. So what are you gonna do? You're gonna go grocery shopping, cook, clean, be there emotionally and physically. You gotta dig deeper. Drive them to physical therapy, doctor's appointments. Don't you forget about the pharmacy. No, you won't. Because that's what caregivers do. Don't give up. Don't ever give up. This is your time to show the world, your family, and yourself that you're tougher than tough. Now go out there and be the best caregiver this world has ever seen. Caregiving is tougher than tough. Find the care guides you need at aarp.org/caregiving. A public service announcement brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Talk Spicy. Coach Gene Clemens here, Riptide Media Network. Couple things I wanted to address from Coach Whit and I's discussion. A few comments. I wanted to bring up some comments and shout out to the people who were listening out here. Shout out to the Keeping It Real Who Dat Sports podcast that said, and I'm going to bring it up here. It says, I think Boston and Dallas' series, if Mavericks do not make history and become the first team to blow a 3-0 lead, will be decided by which team's bench is the most consistent throughout the series. I expect all the stars to play like stars. While I don't necessarily disagree, I'm looking at the reality of the way in which they play. Which one of these teams is going super deep on their bench, right? Like, they're not really like the people who are deciding these games are coming from the starters. Like, the benches have not been a factor to the extent where they're deciding games, in my opinion. Now, could that change in the NBA Finals? Obviously, it could, but we all know that as you get closer and closer to the championship, the rotation gets smaller and smaller. That's just kind of how, what happens. So I'm not necessarily saying that's a wrong assumption. I'm just saying, like, have we seen the benches be that noticeable? I think I've seen Indiana's bench be more productive than I've seen Boston's bench be. But because Boston has 5 guys who do a lot, or 4 guys who do a ton for them, they've been able to have a lot of success. But we shall see, because one of those, if Kristaps Porzingis comes back, one of those guys are going to the bench. So that might make them more formidable. Might. Another thing they say is, I'm going to have to disagree with you on Drew Holiday. Milwaukee missed him this season. Every contending team in the NBA would love to have a Drew Holiday. I would say he is an all-around above average player and borderline star. He can be difference in a championship series. I would normally agree with you. In a previous episode of the pod, maybe 2 podcasts ago, maybe 1, I said that, well, actually, no, I remember what it was. It was right before the Boston Celtics, Indiana Pacers series started. I said that this is what Drew Holiday was here for. He was here to shut down those teams that have those preeminent point guards, right? And if, no offense to him, but he just hasn't done it. Like, Tyrese Halliburton was mollywopping the guys who the next guard who comes in after Halliburton is on the bench. I believe that's TJ McConnell. TJ McConnell getting off. Halliburton gets hurt. So the onus for the ball handling goes to Nembhard. Nembhard is getting off. Now, what Whit would say is, hey, this is the NBA, right? That's what they do. But if you can't be the guy who essentially clamps down and turns what would be a normal day for the star or for the preeminent guy at the point guard into a subpar day, like if you can't do that with Halliburton and you can't do that with Nembhard, what you going to do with Kyrie Irving? Make no mistakes about this, ladies and gentlemen. Kyrie Irving is coming back to Boston to spoil the day. Kyrie Irving is upset that all of Boston made him the scapegoat for why they were not good. And I might be one of the only people on the other side of this argument. I might be one of the only people on the other side of this argument. I might be one of the only people who says, well, you know, if Tatum and Brown had been able to do to Kyrie what Kyrie did to LeBron, which was to accept that they were younger, not in their prime, that's the guy. That's the guy. And we're going to roll with the guy. They might already have a championship. They might already have a championship. Imagine that team and the way in which those two players play. If Kyrie Irving is in that mix, it's not like their guards are out there, distributing the ball. They play ISO ball all over the place. They play ISO ball. Kyrie Irving, best ISO ball player in the league. Best ISO ball player in the world. In the world. Bar none. The next best ISO ball player might be on his team. So, make no mistakes. Drew Holiday is going to have to show that he is, as keeping it real with who that sports says, an above average to borderline star. Now, I think he's a good player. I don't think he's a star. That was my point. But he's going to have to prove that. Because if not, Kyrie Irving's not coming in there to score 17, 18 points a game. He's coming in there to devour them, to torch them, to destroy them. They tried to end him in Boston. They tried to end him in Boston. Will he get booed? Absolutely. Should he have thicker skin nowadays? Absolutely. Is he balanced? Does he have his chi right? Absolutely. He's been able to until this series where he really popped out, because I think he felt like Anthony Edwards tried him, right? He's been able to kind of chill. And so now when he fully steps on the gas, when he fully unleashes the full game, what are they doing? They don't even have a rim protector in Boston. I know Coach Whit's out here talking about Porzingis and how good of a defender he is, but y'all got to miss me with that. I just don't believe it. I've seen him play. He's soft. If they're going at Gobert, you think they're not going at Kristaps Porzingis? Especially a possibly hobbled Kristaps Porzingis? They're definitely going at him. Absolutely, positively, without any equivocations, they're going at him. So that's going to be fun to watch. Shout out to Keeping It Real, Who That Sports podcast. Make sure that you give them a follow on X. Shout out to FCS Fan Nation that said I should come hang out in Montana for a week. Is that the week that is warm in Montana? And if so, I can be swayed. I have a feeling I will be okay with the drinks. I just need to know if there's going to be any visuals there for me to see other than the mountains. Right? Because I am me. I'm a social butterfly. I'm not coming there to get in touch with nature. I'm coming there to see the people. So shout out to FCS Nation Radio, Kevin and all the boys there. We can't wait to get started and get fired back up for the FCS season. It's going to be a great one. Right now we've got UFL in full swing. We've got the European League of Football in full swing. We got the J League, I think it's the J League, in full swing. The Japanese Football League. Yo, there's real, legitimate, good football going on. I mean legitimate 11v11 football, Americana going on right now. For all the people that said nobody asked for spring football, nobody wants spring football isn't this, spring football isn't that. The WNBA at the height of its powers, with everyone pushing it and everybody talking about it, and Caitlin Clark doing 811,000 on the average viewership. The EPL, the English Premier League, which everyone is telling us that America loves soccer, but nobody can actually prove it when it comes to watching soccer. They might love playing it. They might love going to the stadium. But as far as on television, EPL is doing 862,000. NHL regular season, that's hockey, 934,000. Right there up underneath NHL, which has been around forever. The UFL at 916,000. It's almost 1 million on average viewership to date on broadcast networks. That is a viable option, ladies and gentlemen. That is a viable product. So for all of the people, mainly all of the football media people who says, I don't care about the UFL. I don't care about spring football. I want to have time off. I'm exhausted. Like, don't try to come back and then muddy the waters for the media people who really want to be able to get in and cover this. Don't just pop up. And to the UFL teams out there, to the UFL teams, to the media relations people, you guys need to endear yourselves to those like myself, to Emory Hunter Football Game Plan, and to all of the other entities out there that have been showing you love from the beginning, since you were the XFL and the USFL, that have been wanting to be in business with you, wanting to promote, wanting to talk about, wanting to increase the stories that come from your teams and your players on your teams. Give us access like that. Allow us to come in and endear the people to the ones on your teams that you feel have stories that need to be told. Because the way you grow the game now is personal. Right? The way you grow the game now is personal. I know for myself, I love football. I love football in the spring. I love football in the fall. I love football in the wintertime. I love football in the summer. Like, I love it. But I love sports. I love sports in the spring. I love sports in the winter. I love sports in the fall. I love sports in the summer. Like, I love sports. So of course I love that. Right? Of course that's going to resonate with me. I'm not saying it's got to resonate with everyone. I'm saying you don't have to try to like bag it. You don't have to try to like make it seem as if it's worthless, as if it's terrible. Because terrible football doesn't consistently get you 1 million watching. I'm sorry, it just doesn't. Like, y'all can lie to somebody who doesn't know any better. But when things aren't hitting, when things aren't going, when people aren't interested, guess what they stop doing? They stop watching. That's it. They just stop watching. And so the fact that people are still watching, the fact that people are still watching, the fact that people are tuning in, you don't have to worry about whether or not they're showing up at the stadiums. A lot of that has to do with factors that don't include whether or not they want to watch. Right? A lot of that has to do with factors. I still believe once all these teams have their homes, you'll see it pick up. I firmly believe that you have to give a sports entity time to grow. You can't just all of a sudden overnight have a fan base. And the only way you overnight have a fan base is if you're playing other teams that are established. But when you are coming into or creating a brand new league where there is no fan base to pull from, how do you build fans? Through personal stories. I want to be one of the people who tell the personal stories. Hey, if you're a UFL content creator out there and you want a platform to come on and talk UFL with, hit me up in the DMs. If my DMs aren't open, like just request to follow me, send me a message. I'll be there. We'll come on, we'll talk UFL. I will make it a daily thing. We will have our UFL section. We will get it popping around UFL if nobody else wants to get it popping around UFL. Emery and I talk UFL all the time. We talk European football, European League of Football all the time. We talk Japanese Football League all the time. I follow players who play over in those leagues. I want to know more. I want to be involved. I plan to be involved. I won't stop until I'm involved in these leagues in some type of way. Why? Because I love football. Because I love football. I love football. And I love any opportunity that these collegiate football players get to make football their vocation. The same way that I love basketball players that can make basketball their vocation, and soccer players that can make soccer their vocation, except in every other sport that's a team sport, players have had opportunities to make the game their vocation. And in football, it's been NFL or bust. Right? It's been NFL or bust. Arena League, you don't make enough money to support yourself. You got to have another job. With what the UFL is doing, you should, a UFL player makes more money than I do. So if you're making more money than I do, then that means you should be all right. I'm excited, man. I'm excited for the UFL playoffs. I'm excited to dive in more into the European League of Football, get to learn more about these individual teams, players on these teams, start reaching out to talk to some of them. I'm looking forward to I'm looking forward to training camp for the NFL. I don't need the games. See, and that's the problem with a lot of media outlets. Y'all need the games in order to be excited. But I love watching the practices. I love being out there, watching how people are moving, seeing how people are getting around. I can produce content just based off that. I don't have to jump to no crazy conclusions either. I can just assess the day for what it is and keep it moving. Before I get out of here, y'all got to make sure that y'all chill out on Bronny James. I hear people continually criticizing him for the moves that he's making. First you say, right? First you say, well, he's only getting this opportunity because of his dad. He's not good enough. He shouldn't be there. He doesn't belong there. He only scored 4-point-something points a game. Nobody brings up the fact that he like had to come back from heart surgery. That is conveniently left out of the conversation. Nobody talks about the fact that his game has never been predicated on scoring a bunch of points. That his game really does emulate his father, except he's just not his father. But nobody is. All of a sudden now his height is a problem. What's the difference between being 6'3" and 6'1"? If you're 6'1" and an ultra elite athlete with long arms, what's the difference between being 6'1" and 6'3"? 6'3" still isn't prototypical ideal NFL height. So 6'1's not going to be prototypical elite NFL height. But you know what is elite? I'm sorry, NBA? You know what is elite NBA height? Elite NBA is the athleticism. And a 40-inch plus vertical is elite athleticism. I don't care how you slice it. Do I look at Bronny James and go, man, he could have been one cold wide receiver. He could have been one cold defensive back. Yes. But it's not for me to decide what he does with his life. He's a basketball player. And guess what? If he doesn't end up sticking in the NBA, but his father was able to open the door and allow him to get into the NBA, then cool. That's a job well done by the pops. Nepotism is happening all over the place. I heard people on the Dan Le Batard show, right? Guys who are on the Dan Le Batard show, a national platform, who only have that job because of their relationship with Dan Le Batard, not because they're good, not because they're good and because they work really hard and they came up and got an opportunity. I'm talking about the guys who just rode the Dan Le Batard coattails right on over to his own network, probably get paid way more than they're worth. Those are the guys who are bashing Bronny James because his dad got him in the door. A lot of the same media people who criticize Bronny James never had to get it in the mud themselves. Never had to work really, really hard. Never had to sacrifice for anything. And so now you want to criticize Bron James Jr. because he got it the same way that you got it? That's the audacity I'll never understand. And we got to stop doing it. If he gets the chance to get his foot in the door because his dad is one of the best players in the history of the game, duh. Michael Jordan couldn't do it. Why? His kids were not good enough. They were not good enough for him to do it. If they went to Division I schools, were they both like legit Division I talents? Who knows? Did at least one of them turn into a legitimately decent college basketball player? Yes. But that's where it tapped out at. So don't be mad at Bron for doing what all of you would hope you were able to do for your kid, which is give them the opportunity to live out their dream with the easiest road as possible. Like, just so two-faced. I watch media members give their kids a microphone, put them in front of a camera, allow them to be seen by the nation, by the world, fall in love. Their follows are up in the hundreds of thousands. They're building a name for themselves already. We don't think that's nepotism? But we want to get mad at LeBron James Jr. because his father is LeBron James? because his father was smart enough to curate a road for his children to get to the highest level at the vocation that they decided to dedicate their lives to? They haven't just been regular kids. They've been basketball players. Their entire lives, they've been playing basketball. And whatever jury wants to do, guess what? They're going to try to open doors to allow her to do it as well. Why? Because that's what you do as a parent when you love your kids. I don't understand. And I'll never understand. Ladies and gentlemen, that's Talk Spicy Riptide Media Network. I'm Coach Gene Clemens. Thank you for joining me. Rate the show, comment, agree, disagree, but whatever you do, keep it spicy. 5-star ratings are appreciated. And if you're joining me on the YouTube channel, on X, on Facebook, on Twitch, on Instagram, make sure you subscribe, make sure you follow, make sure you like, make sure you retweet, make sure you repost. Until tomorrow, peace.